First, Billy, thank you for taking the time to talk with me.
Of
Now,
course.
let's jump into where we are right now. I think you just wrapped up your UK tour. What has it been like being back on the road and also being able to perform these new songs for people?
It's been great. It's probably been my favorite tour so far. We kind of switched things up band and wise because there's some of the artists that played on the album, so everything feels cohesive and nice. And yeah, the crowds have just been really incredible and super genuine and sweet, and it's been really, really nice.
Is it always an anxious moment when you have finished an album, but you're still in that limbo period of releasing it and being able to play it for people? What are the sort of thoughts that go through your mind in those periods?
There's always the week before the album comes out, you just do random things. And I think your brain is kind of compartmentalized the album as just a date and it's going to happen. And then it starts to unfold and you realize how much of life is in there and how little you can stop it from happening. So that's kind of the worst week of the year for me. And then during release, it's like a wedding or a birthday. It's just a lot. And then I suppose I've never been in such straight terms of touring immediately after the album. So I haven't really had time to process it yet. Um, but playing the new tunes and people singing them back to you is always a good sign. And I feel like the album's resonated with people, definitely.
That's awesome to hear. Well, let's talk about the music then, because the last time we spoke, I remember at the end of our interview, you mentioned something like you wanted to gather some musicians around you, create kind of a certain band feel. Now, I think you've accomplished that, but can you take me through kind of what the process was and what the aim was, so to say, with the new songs?
Well, I started it in a studio alone and
Okay.
was just building up demos the way everybody does. And then I got maybe a few weeks into that process and wasn't really enjoying it. And I kept hitting um, obstacles along the way. And largely due to my ineptitude at using music software. As in, I know how things want to sound, I just struggle to get there. And then I just started inviting people over, friends of friends, and people that I thought could add something interesting. And then got this big batch of demos that were kind of in band form, but nothing was live. So that's when I spoke with Dom, who produced with me, and we wanted to just elevate everything an extra 5 inches, and really get across the point that they are just very simple to the point, pure songs that should be delivered in that way.
I like you using the word simple because oftentimes that can have somewhat negative connotations or something is simple. But I think the way you approach it, um, perhaps simple is more a sense of purity or a sense of honesty. So, can you take me through what your uh, philosophy is on songwriting in a way where you because one of the words that I came across in researching you as well is you're looking for clarity in a sense in songwriting. So can you explain that a little bit?
I think that's what I mean by simplicity.
Okay.
I a lot of the time get overwhelmed and stressed and anxious about how many things are in the world, to put it simply. Um, Songwriting before has been an exercise in me understanding that um, although I don't align with the modern age and consumerism and all this music going on at the same time, although I don't align with that, I am in this world as everybody else is. So I have to get my point across despite that. And that's why I think I'm drawn to very pure, to the point musical messages. And I think all my favorite albums do that. And I like pretty things. And I think that's allowed.
No, of course.
Yeah, and I think that's my ethos. I've always said I wanted to be quietly happy. I've always said there are very few things that I need to survive, and I'm coming to terms with that in my musical narrative.
When was it early on that you figured out that one of the things at least that you needed was music? What was that early in your life, or how has that evolved into where you are now, where it's also kind of your livelihood?
Yeah, mad. I just remember not understanding how it was a job. I couldn't. Yeah, I didn't understand the way that the industry worked at all, and I just thought music was just there and it just landed in your lap. But I certainly remember being heavily attached to music as a young kid, and often the stuff that is played around the house would usually be ignored because it's not necessarily what a kid wants to listen to. But I remember listening to the first Antony and the Johnsons record in the back of the car, which is super weird and subverts a lot of the classic musical traits and especially what it means to be an artist. And I think it was, yeah, for Today I Am a Bird. It was that one that I resonated with a lot. And I must have been, 4 or 5.
Okay.
It was definitely there with me and sort of imbued through my family and their existence and what we all grew up with, I guess.
This and tying into this is what I sometimes hear from artists is one of the reasons why they start writing songs is it because it's easier to put into a song what they want to explain rather than just talking to people directly. Is the same then true for you as well?
Yeah, I really struggled with identity at the start because I felt that my true identity was my musical self.
Mm.
And that meant there was a finite amount of things that were true to me in terms of, 10 songs on an album or demos here and there that actually got to the core of me. But then I started to realize that perhaps I was looking for things that resonated with me in the wrong places in terms of I separated and isolated myself to get to this core, phantom core, when I should have been kind of allowing myself to bed into society a bit more and kind of gain a musical family. Yeah. So now I very much exist without music as an entity, and then when a moment comes, and it will just come, and I can't sit there and try to write a song, then I know that it's pretty honest. Yeah.
Yeah, I've had a discussion with somebody else about this the other day where I definitely I'm not a songwriter, so I really don't know, but I think you do need to live life in order to write decent songs and to have them have a more substantial meaning, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. And I knew that living a life in the studio, in a writing room, doing a 9 to 5, and then going on tour was just not sustainable for me at all. I think I would drive myself insane. And in fact, some of the songs on the album were written when I couldn't write a song in the day, and then last minute it arrived.
Okay.
So there's a certain amount of suffering that we have to bear.
That's interesting that you say that because I was gonna ask something else, but maybe that can wait. What do you mean by suffering? Because I do kind of get it, but can you explain that the process of a creative? Because I always see it as there's so much doubt involved because you pour yourself into something, you create something, and then you kind of have to throw it out there for other people to judge it. So what is the mindset for you as a creative?
Well, I kind of look at it from uh, I guess an inside out point of view, wherein I know that my existence is sort of not to blow my own horn in any way, but for anyone that's a creative and makes something out of nothing and makes a living from it, I think is just a mad concept. So we must have suffering in order to kind of allow, or, you know, what's the word?
Is it almost wanting to balance things out?
Exactly, from all this joy, you know, I can't take it.
Okay.
There's good stuff happening, and so I don't believe in the tortured artist thing. I don't believe that you have to have a miserable existence in order to make good music, but I do believe that all artists are suffering somewhat because they're trying to get to that middle, that point, that separate kind of end game, which is, I guess, what I'm talking about with the clarity thing. Sure. And how each song is still the same. I'm just trying to get to the same outcome. So if I didn't suffer during that process, I don't know, life would be too good.
Have you always felt comfortable then with being vulnerable? Because this all ties in with what we mentioned earlier about the clarity thing. If we take a song like "I Bend to Him," it's very sparse musically, but you can kind of really hear yourself and you feel the emotion. So have you always been gravitating towards kind of showing that part of yourself, or being vulnerable?
I think it's what I resonate most with other artists, and a song like that is basically a poem, and it didn't really need a strong backbone of musical production. It just needed an accompaniment, like any poem would. So I think it's just about picking which songs require a lift, or which songs need to be painted in a darker mood to get the lyrics across, but you're sort of just assisting the song, you know. And I think that treatment was the right thing to do. It started on guitar, and it was more of a classical structured song, Dylan type thing. And then I've been using that little Casio keyboard all throughout the album, so it just made sense to kind of do it then and there. And I actually came back to the studio to do that.
Okay.
On the day after the last day, so we had to squeeze it on there.
What was gnawing at you as that final day approached? What made you kind of go in last minute and change it?
Honestly, we ran out of time and money. We ran out of time and money, and Dom knew that, because there was maybe 4 or 5 songs that we'd consciously just left to the last minute, and Dom knew that it had to be on there. And we also needed something to switch the moods between side A and side B. So that was a little minute and a half song to do that.
And was it similar then with the opening? Because the album opens with that instrumental kind of humming piece. So do you think a lot about sequencing and how you structure an album?
I do, yeah. I'm deeply into it. And when I think about the album time, I mostly think about the end day, on the last day of mixing. And we all laid down on the floor and had the songs on cards, and we were just switching the order around for hours. And then we got to the conclusion, which was the way it is now. But it's a really good moment where you've got this, you know, bag of treats, and you just have to make sure that they come out in the right order.
That moment that you speak about, there comes a moment where you have to let it go, all the decisions and everything. Is that what kind of moment is that for you? Is that a liberating moment? Is that a bittersweet moment? How do you feel about that letting go of what you made and just hoping for the best, I suppose?
I'm wondering if I have become just less protective over music. I think it's the first album where I've not had too much crippling fear. There's always a lot in there, but before it's been kind of very hard to bear. And this time I knew that there was just no other way I could have made that album, and it's not perfect. And yes, I would do some things differently already. But it accurately describes that time and that relationship. And It didn't need any fluff around it, any bells and whistles or anything. It just had to be pure.
Fair enough. Final kind of line of questioning then. You mentioned relationship, and the album Drop Cherries is kind of I believe from what I read, a reference to kind of surrendering yourself to a certain love, or to really appreciate that you love somebody who's in your life. Well, first, uh, how would you say that? What characterized this period for you? That this was the topic that was at the forefront of your mind, and then also, how do you navigate through all? Well, there's doubt in relationships. There's complete surrender, as I said, and there's all these different elements of love. How do you navigate your way through those different aspects of what you're talking about?
Well, it sort of happened without me deciding what the subject was. I
Okay.
guess I had a muse before. My muse has always been nature, sadness, melancholy, wanting of the past, classic singer-songwriter feelings and dwellings. And then once one song came out that was directed to this particular person, it just started flowing. And I found it so much more inspiring to talk about another subject that wasn't me. And obviously it's threaded in my own narrative and perspective on the relationship in there, but it's mostly being able to compliment someone for 45 minutes, which is quite and then acknowledging that no two relationships are the same, which I think is important to acknowledge. And then any moments of darkness that are presented in this album, and since he's actually made a record about so you might hear it on his as well, just acknowledging the blue parts and making sure that you're both experiencing those feelings together. So it's kind of the idea of communal suffering.
Shared suffering. Well, this is very interesting. This time around, maybe yes, but when you were writing the album, did that person know that you were writing about them?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
that because is that nerve-wracking? Because as you mentioned, you kind of have these very very pure feelings, but then you write these songs and create them, and you kind of have to show them, or I don't know how that went, but how is that process of, hey, listen, I wrote a whole album or some songs
It's
about you?
like, when someone gives you a present or a card and then they go, open it now. And then you go, absolute no, thank you. It's my worst thing ever. Even with, my most loved ones, I still don't like doing that because it's such a private thing and cards are so sincere, really. It may be a happy birthday, but it's usually written with some sort of sincere undertone. And I suppose that's what it was like handing these songs over and, watching one another experience the reaction in real time was pretty intense. But it's mostly just it's so nice. I don't know if the song's ever been written about you, but it's a nice feeling.
I don't think anybody has tried yet. No.
We'll see.
Last question. You're going to the States, I believe, in a couple of days' time.
Yeah, I'm
Now,
trying.
yeah. Well, what is your? Are you very very internationally orientated? Is that very important to you to see what is possible, for instance, in the States, but also different parts of the world?
Yeah, I mostly feel as a British artist, sort of I feel bad for all the comments I get about not being able to explore more of the world, basically. And I don't understand why nobody tours in South America. Well, I do understand, but South America and New Zealand, Australia, still haven't been over there. And the US, I'm slowly sort of getting my claws in, but it is really important to me. And each time I travel, I gain more experience and just more of an overview on the world, I guess, which is helpful for me. But then also, I'm a home bird. I love being at home and I love taking days very slowly and, appreciating little things. Sorry, there's a crying baby outside now.
Well, go tend to the baby then, because I, that was my. Oh, no, it's not yours. Okay, fair enough. Um, Yeah, thank you so much, Billie, for taking the time. And as you mentioned, yeah, I think it's a healthy attitude to separate those two worlds a little bit, and also know when to take it easy.
Yeah.
So, Billie, thanks again for a lovely conversation.
Thank you so much.